commerce completely shuts down, and you will not be able to buy anything you need to survive once the store's current supply runs out or gets looted. You would have no money outside of what is in your wallet or safe. Our entire finance industry is run by electricity. Most people have no clue that the average bank branch has less than $10,000 on hand at any given time. I wanted to pay cash, $9,000, for an older EMP-proof Jeep a while back, and my bank told me I'd have to schedule that size withdrawal in advance, and it would take the bank 3 days to get it. If you can't get quick access to your money, or at the bank, pre-societal collapse, what makes you think you're going to get your money out after things have fallen apart? My bet is the banks aren't even going to open their doors once the grid goes down. They know people are panicking, and they don't have the cash on hand to give to them, most of whom will want to drain their accounts. Besides, every bank I know of uses computers and electricity to perform bank transactions. There is no electricity, remember? You were a millionaire before the crash, and not anymore. Don't bet on a single bank opening its doors for business. Also, don't rely on storing up large amounts of gold and silver for a grid-down scenario. No one is going to trade you precious food for your gold or silver coins. It'll be years before there is any semblance of normal commerce where you can use precious metals to barter for tools or food. I would recommend spending whatever cash on hand you have in the first few days getting as much food as possible. Within a week, once store owners, the very few with heavy security that haven't been looted already, figure out that the power isn't coming back on, your money is worthless. A hungry person isn't going to trade you a can of beans for $1,000. There would be no communication with those who live farther away from you than earshot. In other words, no phones, no emails, no mail delivery, no Facebook, and no Twitter. Are you getting the picture? Think about all the family and loved ones that have moved away. Do you have a sibling in California? Do you have a son or daughter at college in Texas? You'll probably never see them or speak to them again. If someone breaks into your house looking for food, how are you going to call for help? Not that the police would be able to respond anyway. There will be no emergency services. Police, firefighters, the National Guard will all be in the same scenario as you are. There will be no way to contact them. Their vehicles will quickly run out of fuel, and the traffic jams will pen them in just like you. They are just everyday people like you and me. Once the looting begins, most will rush home to be with their families and protect them from the rioters and home invasions. Very few will show up to work on day 3. Some of the more honorable single men may stay at their post for a while and try to help out, but within days of the grid going down, don't expect to see any emergency services. You will likely see the same result with National Guardsmen, who are typically activated via a phone roster. Most will not be reached, and most will not report for duty or will go AWOL to protect their family once things go south. Again, in a crisis situation, they will put the safety of their family before orders from their superiors. Even active duty military will experience a huge amount of AWOL soldiers heading home to protect their loved ones and family. However, a good portion of their families live on base, and they will be available for duty. Even so, as I explained earlier, the military bases will not be able to perform disaster relief because the military is dependent on civilian electric grid. While they may have a few thousand MREs on hand, their food situation is the same as yours. It's eventually going to run out. Law and order may last a while longer on military bases with possible C-130 shipments of food from international aid, but eventually the big bases will dissolve into rioting and looting just like the big cities. There are no hospitals or medicine. Most hospitals are only required to have 1 or 2 days' supply of backup electricity. Once they run out, loved ones on life support will die. Hospitals will be flooded with emergencies and injuries related to people doing stupid things out of their normal routine. How many nurses and doctors will stay more than a few days without going back home to check on their families and protect them from looters? Without the ability to get resupplied, the hospitals will soon run out of bandages and the like. How long before the doctors and nurses throw up their hands in despair with the inability to help an ever-increasing number of patients and head home? You need a prescription to survive? Guess what? Almost 20% of America's population does as well. This includes everyone who suffers from asthma to diabetes. The drugstores will be closed because they have no way to verify prescriptions or check you out with the non-functioning cash registers. How long before the tweakers and heroin addicts raid your local pharmacy because there are no security cameras and no way for the police to respond? How long will the vials of medicine you so desperately need last without refrigeration once the electric grid goes down? If your child requires medication and you haven't stockpiled or are unwilling to risk looting your local pharmacy, then you will know exactly when that child will die, shortly after his or her current supply of medicine runs out. Your house will not protect you like it has in the past. There will be no AC or heat in your home. If you live in an area of the country that has cold winters or hot summers, life will become very uncomfortable and deadly in some cases. A lot of malnutrition people, not thinking clearly, will resort to doing incredibly stupid things to get warm, like start a fire in their house or burn a charcoal grill indoors. In urban areas with row houses and large apartment buildings, you will likely see large, out-of-control fires burning whole city blocks because one person does something dumb and there are no fire trucks, they're out of gas, to come and put the fires out. Besides, there's going to be no water pressure at the fire hydrants, even if they could get there. You could actually see whole sections of large cities burn to the ground with no way to stop the flames. Do you know how to stay warm in your home once the thermostat drops below freezing? Many people will go to bed and not wake up the next morning. Also, a lot of people watch action movies and think they can hide behind a door or wall to be protected from someone who is shooting at them. This is not accurate. Most bullets will travel through multiple walls until they hit a stud or two. Your home is not bulletproof. Ducking down below your window in a firefight with your starving neighbors will not protect you from their bullets. If you rely on city sewage, it will likely back up into your home over time. Raw sewage could start bubbling out of your sinks and tubs as people continue to use toilets and sinks, even though the sewage facility isn't operating. This will create dangerously high levels of methane in your home that could make you very sick. Because of poor sanitary conditions around the country and most people not cleaning their hands properly before cooking due to lack of water, dysentery and cholera will become major pandemics in this country, with a lot of people getting sick and dying. Regular baths will be a thing of the past, and many people will start bathing in their local creek or water source, causing dangerous bacteria to float downstream where other families rely on the same water source for drinking. Don't rely on your vehicle getting you out of Dodge. In the event of a super EMP, a large number of cars will come to a stop in the middle of the street. Even if they don't, a lot of people will try to flee the city on empty gas tanks, causing massive traffic jams. It only takes a handful of cars to run out of gas on the roadways to completely block traffic. If you do not flee town within 24 hours of the grid going down, you are likely to find yourself penned in. If you have a vehicle that is running, it will only run if you can get fuel for it. Most gas stations don't have backup generators. The ones that do will quickly be overrun and emptied. There is no way to resupply them because trucks rely on the gas stations to get the fuel to other gas stations. Even if they could be rigged to resupply from their own tanks, don't forget there are massive traffic jams all over the country. Even if they could work out the details, very few truckers are going to leave their families behind unprotected while they travel across the country with rioters and looters everywhere. Oil refineries take massive amounts of electricity to operate and will not be operational anytime soon. Well, what about the nation's precious fuel reserves? Well, if you don't think the government is going to confiscate that for military and government use, I have oceanfront property in Arizona I'd like to sell you. There will be no refueling shortly after the grid goes down. Now, if you are a forward thinker and have a large supply of fuel for your vehicle, I would only recommend using it for the first few days. After a week, most cars will be out of gas and people will be desperate for a running vehicle to get them where they need to go. And if you are driving one of the few cars on the roadways, you are a target. I wouldn't start using the vehicle again for a full year after most of the starving masses are dead. You will not have lights once it grows dark outside. I understand that you may have a flashlight and some candles at your house, but honestly, how long will your batteries and candles last? I would use them very sparingly for a couple of reasons. With no streetlights or ambient light in the cities, nighttime will become a very dark and dangerous place to find yourself outdoors, and light attracts attention. If you do have a large supply of batteries or candles, use them very carefully. 2 weeks in, people start getting hungry and desperate. Lights coming from a house will be a huge beacon for looters and home invaders who will use the cover of darkness for their nefarious activities. Most people have never been to the mountains on a backpacking trip. On a cloudy, dark night, you can see someone smoking a cigarette on the next mountain over. In a perfectly dark city, light escaping from around the edge of your blinds or curtains will be seen from a long way off. In a grid-down situation, you want to rise with the sun and go to bed once it gets dark, utilizing natural light and conserving flashlights and candles for emergencies. These are just a few of the ways your life would be impacted by the electric grid going dark. Next, let me paint a picture for you on how difficult it would be to just procure water. For the last 75 years, you turn a faucet on and a seemingly endless supply of crystal clear water comes pouring out to drink, cook, and bathe with. It's always been that way, and that's all contemporary Americans have ever known. Most Americans don't even realize that half of the world's population will never enjoy that luxury, but I digress. That endless water supply stops within hours of the grid going down, and I'd guess many of you probably never pondered the logistics behind gathering and purifying your own water. Please don't get lazy when it comes to purifying your water. If you do, you will eventually get sick or die from waterborne viruses, bacteria, or parasites. It's only a matter of time. Depending on your home's location and relevance to your local water tower, your house could lose water pressure within minutes or hours. Due to the extreme amounts of electricity used to process and pump water into the water tower for the average town, most cities do not have backup generators for this. The ones that do will only last for a few hours to a day at the most. If you live in the country and have a well, did you know that typically your well pump operates on 220-amp electricity? Your water stops instantly unless you are one of the lucky few who have a backup diesel generator or similar power source. Now, how much fuel do you have stored? FEMA estimates that the average person with a backup generator has less than 5 gallons of fuel on hand at a given time. Well, even if you have more, you're going to run out at some point. Also, gas and diesel generators are extremely noisy, letting every starving person within a mile know you have electricity. Well, what if you live in the Southwest? To put it politely, you're probably going to be dead soon. Deserts were never meant to be inhabited for obvious reasons, and only electricity and our modern infrastructure allowed us to live there in comfort. The nomads throughout the centuries who traveled the world's deserts had life skills available to them that we both know you don't possess. For those of you who do live in areas where you have nearby streams or other water sources, do you know how to purify your water? Well, let's assume you do. You're going to soon run out of bleach drops and iodine tablets, or your purification cartridge will eventually get clogged. You're now a week or more into a grid-down situation, and you're going to have to boil your water just like everyone else did for the last 3,000 years. How far away do you think starving and desperate people can see and smell your fire? Farther than you think. On the plus side, your shoulder muscles are going to be huge from carrying 5-gallon buckets of water from the nearest stream back to your home. Sounds like fun, right? You're eventually going to need to take a bath. How many many 5-gallon buckets does it take to fill up a bath for each member of your family? Think about that. Next, do you know how to start a fire in the rain to boil the water? Oh, you do? Great. How much firewood do you need to have on hand to build a fire and boil water twice each day? If you have any firewood at all, it will probably be gone faster than you think. Do you have a large saw or axe to cut down a dead tree? And how many dead trees do you think you have close by your home? How far will you eventually have to travel to find firewood? Can you physically cut the tree down and then bolt it up into 6-foot sections and then carry the logs long distance back to your house, only to cut the long logs into 16-inch lengths? You're still not done. Have you ever split wood before? Are you proficient enough to do it without sticking the axe in your own shin when you miss the log you're aiming at because you're physically exhausted and weak from hunger? Hospitals will be overrun, and most won't be operating without electricity or supplies after day 5 or 6. I hope that deep cut doesn't get infected, or you'll lose the leg and you'll probably die from infection. But again, I digress.